Pacify. Part 1. Chapter 5. A Good Man. Albus came 4 days later to take Potter away. He did not share what it was regarding, which infuriated Severus to an inappropriate degree. He felt like Potter had been stolen, which was, of course, absurd. The boy didn't belong to him, or to anyone else. Ridiculous reason to feel so bloody anxious. Harry Potter wasn't his, no matter what mad arrangement they'd entered into. When Albus returned Harry to number 12, and then called Severus to a meeting, he'd feared the worst. Surely Potter had spilled everything, had told the headmaster every last sordid detail, and now Severus would be sacked, turned into a snake, and shot into the sun. At least he'd get some sleep. Safe to say, Severus was relieved and shocked in equal measure to have the coveted defense against the dark arts position dropped into his lap. Apparently, Harry had been used as a pawn to coerce Horace Slughorn to return to his old position as potions master. Severus was speechless. "How dare you take him with you for that purpose?" he wanted to ask. "And when can I start? And if you knew what I had been doing, you would not be saying this. And haven't you noticed what has happened to Potter? And don't you care? And who is supposed to be watching him?" Instead of any of that, though, he just asked, "Have you changed your mind about me, then?" Albus looked at him over his half-moon spectacles. "No, my dear boy. I am simply in need of you. If you don't think this is the right avenue, I will, of course, send word to Horace that he will no longer be required." "You know I want it," Severus replied shortly. "Why now?" Albus stayed silent. Severus scoffed. "Because it's a cursed position. You should have given it to me years ago then. Put me out of my misery." "I didn't want to lose you from the school, on the off chance that it is, in fact, cursed." The old man smiled serenely. "As you know, the time for those concerns is drawing to a close." "Yes, I am aware." "Do you accept, then?" "Of course I do," Severus spat. Then he hesitated. "But there is something you must know." He paused again. "Something I have done. I wouldn't feel right if—" He broke off suddenly, unable to continue, and Albus let him suffer for several seconds. "Is this about Harry?" he finally asked. Severus was not quite startled. It was what he'd expected, after all. Yes." Albus did not prompt him, but only steepled his fingers and waited. Severus cleared his throat. "Potter is unwell," he began. He has not been sleeping. He has been seeking me out. I take it this has been disturbing to you. Frankly, yes, it has been. After our history, I struggle to understand it. And what do you think? Severus looked away from Albus's piercing blue eyes and down at his hands. He finds my animosity calming somehow. He's been coming to find me at night. Initially, lately he steeled himself. I've been giving him dreamless sleep, much stronger than healer regulation. He's come to me most nights since the end of July. I allow him to fall asleep in my presence and then levitate him back to his bed while everyone else is sleeping. Severus rubbed his fingers against his eyes. I shouldn't have, and I knew it. I did it anyway, repeatedly. Is that all? Severus looked back up. Is that all? He repeated, drugging a student, allowing him to come to my rooms at night, tolerating this arrangement for weeks. Albus just gazed at him steadily. Severus found himself enraged by it. No, he burst out, that is not all. He clenched his hands into fists. No need to go to the gallows all at once. Well, Albus prompted. Severus snorted in derision. What else? I've hurt him. He has lashed out physically at me more than once, and I hurt him. I was trying to make him stop. I see. Albus was silent for a while longer. It seems that you have moved past that. Is that correct? You have an understanding, as it were? Severus was incredulous. Have you lost your mind? I have manhandled and drugged a student. I have allowed him to sleep in my bed, and you ask me if we have an understanding. Harry is a special case, as well you know. Is he getting what he needs from you in these visits? Tranquilized through his nightmares? Knocked off his pedestal and onto the bloody floor? Yes, I certainly have been doing those things for him, despite my best intentions. What precisely do you mean by what he needs? Harry is facing harder times yet. As are you, Severus. Oh, yes, of course, he thought. Harry Potter had an expiration date burned onto his forehead. Can't forget that. The boy likely wouldn't see 20, or 17 if the Dark Lord had his way. And, of course, Severus was doomed to put the light out of the old man's eyes forever. They were all damned. All of them. Terrible of him to forget that nothing mattered anymore. Albus wasn't going to put a stop to it at all. He was going to facilitate it. Severus imagined telling his headmaster about Harry kissing him, climbing into his lap, begging him for unspeakable things, and the mere memory of it brought heat to his face. I think Potter needs more from me than I can give, Severus said. And then a thought thought that had only just occurred to him. He held it back for a moment, turning it over in his mind. But, as Albus had so succinctly said, it really was all over for them anyway. All of them. I am concerned for him once school resumes. If he can't, he swallowed hard. If he can't come to me. Albus's eyes crinkled at the corners. Have you come to care for him? After all, Severus? He asked. Severus said nothing. After all this time, I have dedicated my life to him, headmaster. Caring is hardly the right word for what I feel for him. I hate him. And I hate you too, old man, he thought. I'm sure something can be arranged to accommodate you both. The headmaster departed the next morning. Potter came to him that night. 11:30, as was apparently the tacitly agreed upon earliest possible time. Unforgivably early. Tap, 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 as usual, on his door. Severus had taken the liberty of lifting a bottle of brandy from the kitchen. He'd had about 4 fingers from it. Not much for a regular drinker, but Severus was not a regular drinker, no matter how much he might like to be. Come, he said in response to the taps. The door swung open, and Harry fucking Potter shuffled in, looking unbearably innocent in his pyjamas and socks. Hi, he said. Severus gestured at the door, which closed. He pointed his wand at it and sealed and warded it. Harry turned back to look at it. Oh, he said. What's going on? Nothing, Severus answered, and pointed at him with the bottle in his left fist. I've spoken to the headmaster about our situation. Harry blanched. You didn't, he said. I did. I definitely told him more than half. Harry stepped further into the room, sat heavily on the edge of the bed beside him, and looked at the bottle in his hand. Are you drinking? He took it and studied the label. Yes, I certainly am, Severus replied, trying to take it back. Harry took a swig and coughed. Merlin Snape, what is this? Lighter fluid? It's brandy, he corrected, grabbing the bottle again. And I believe I have a title now as your warden. Yes, sir, Harry laughed. That is really bad. No, Potter, you are just underaged. He stopped suddenly, and when Harry tried to take the bottle back, he withdrew it. So, what? Are you going to be beheaded for laying hands on me? Harry asked, still reaching for the brandy. No, Severus answered. I'm being promoted. You... What? What'd you tell him? I told him that you have been bothering me, and I've done things to you, and I've been giving you sleeping draughts, and I've let you sleep in my bed, under the noses of everyone. Severus took another long drink. And I'm being given the defence position. Preposterous! Harry made another grab for the bottle, but Severus held it up. Ask nicely, Potter, he he said. "He might not care to protect you, but I do." "Defense? I thought that new teacher I met was taking the job. Slughorn or whatever." "Ah, no. He's a potions master, like me. Potions professor. He was my predecessor as head of Slytherin House." Severus paused. "He's a pompous prick." Harry laughed out loud. "He did seem pompous," he said, trying again for the bottle. Severus held it still higher. "So, what? You've been given the position you've wanted for ages? You should have slapped me around much sooner." Severus grabbed the hand Harry had extended towards the brandy and jerked it down towards the bed, spilling him into his lap. "I have very pointedly not slapped you around, Potter," he said, and gripped the back of Harry's neck, holding him down, taking another drink from the bottle with his other hand. "I deserve some credit for not doing much worse to you, even when you begged for it." Harry's body was rigid across Severus's legs. "I give you no credit," he said. "You should," Severus answered, and found that he was suddenly angry. He shoved Harry off his lap and onto the floor and stood up, planting one boot on the boy's chest and laying him out flat with it. "You should care what happens to you, Potter," he said. "You're supposed to care. You're not supposed to be like this. It was never—" He broke off. Harry was looking up at him from the floor, his eyes brilliant and unforgiving in the shadows. "Should," he repeated, voice mocking. "Supposed to." Severus moved away and slammed the bottle down on his bedside table. He pressed his palms flat on either side of it and took a deep breath. He'd meant it to steady him, but it did no such thing. He could hear Harry making his way back to his feet beside the bed, could hear the shuffle of his socks against the floor, and he turned back around to look at him. He was fragile and damaged and beautiful, as he had been all along. Severus hated him for it. "You," he growled and grabbed the front of his t-shirt, digging his fingers into the fabric, wanting to tear it. "I was supposed to save you." Harry's hands came up to grasp his wrist in what was becoming a familiar gesture. "No one can save me," he answered. Severus wanted to hit him, wanted to rip him open. He kissed him instead. No, more than that. Severus assaulted him, one hand fisted in his shirt, the other on the back of his head, dragging him close and pressing their mouths together savagely. He wanted to erase him, wanted to consume him, wanted to save him, to protect him. It was impossible. He turned them sharply and crushed Potter to the bed. He could hear the air that was knocked out of him and the shallow gasp that followed. "I hate you," Severus growled, kissing him again, pressing against him, into him. "Hate me," Harry gasped back and grabbed the back of his neck. Severus jerked away, almost relishing the pain of Harry's fingernails cutting into his skin, and clapped his hand over the boy's mouth. "You're filthy," he said. Harry's legs hooked around him, emphasizing the position Severus, as always, had put them in. He snarled in disgust, even as he bore down, pressing them together. Harry was hard, and he was hard, and he ground against him, feeling Harry's hips rise up to meet him, Harry's heels moving to dig into his lower back, demanding more contact. He sunk his fingertips hard into Harry's jaw, his palms sealed over his mouth, hot breath huffing out over the back of his hand. Harry's eyes were closed tight, his colour high, his hips pressing urgently up with each thrust of Severus's down. And despite the hand over his mouth, Severus could hear every breath and moan, each small sound driven into his brain like a nail. There was a shallow whine, and his lungs seized suddenly in his chest. He wasn't supposed to be doing this. He'd promised himself he wouldn't. He jerked his hand away. "Tell me to stop," he demanded. "Red sparks, Potter, tell me." "No," Harry gasped back, his hips bucking off the bed, grinding against him. "I won't. Fuck." Severus replaced his hand as if smothering a fire, that time covering Harry's mouth and pressing over his nose, cutting off his air entirely. Harry made a noise, but not of protest. "Look at me," Severus demanded, and Harry obeyed, opening his eyes and gazing up at him. Fearless. His pupils were huge and black, framed by the tiniest sliver of emerald green, like bottomless pits, and Severus stared into them, wanting to fall into the darkness he saw there. A tiny, fractured squeak issued from the back of Harry's throat, and his hips started to jerk feverishly. He was right on the brink, chasing his pleasure under the weight of Severus's body. It was excruciating to see. Severus was sure that his vision must be greying at the edges, but he didn't fight. Didn't struggle. No, he wanted more. Always more, and there were 5, maybe 10 more seconds of desperate movement, and he was coming, his legs flexing in around Severus's waist, and his fingers digging hard into his shoulders. Severus tore his hand away from Potter's mouth at once, barely in time to hear the most exquisitely depraved noise tear itself from the boy's throat. A gasp for air, a moan, and a sob all at once. His head and chest curling up off the bed, and his legs squeezing tight. At the sound, the movement, Severus was unable to hold himself back. He turned his face into the wild black hair and cried out, spilling himself in his clothes like a virgin. His arms unlocked as the spasm subsided, and he collapsed forward against Harry's chest, feeling the aftershocks in the boy's body shudder through him like small earthquakes. Harry was panting hard, each shallow breath coming out with a small and piteous whine, his chest struggling to rise under Severus's weight. Laboriously propping himself up, Severus looked down at him. His eyes were closed again, his dark lashes wet against pink cheeks, his mouth open, lips swollen and red. Severus felt his brain cataloguing every detail, as if the look on Potter's face right at that moment were a priceless treasure discovered at great personal cost. "Look what you've done, you horrific monster," he thought. "Look what you've done." Gently, Severus unhooked the boy's legs from around him and eased them to the floor. He stood up unsteadily, summoned his wand, and cleaned them both. Then he walked into the bathroom and locked himself inside. He took off his clothes and turned on the shower, standing directly under the cold spray. He let it pour and pour over him as it slowly began to gather heat, steam gradually clouding the air. And he stayed there a long time, doing nothing at all, as the water surrounded him. Severus had once asked Albus about his soul. If Albus cared what would happen to it when Severus eventually had to kill him. The headmaster had, in his own way, given some comfort, given Severus a way to see it as something other than murder. It would be a mercy, Albus had said, to help an old man avoid pain, and to save Draco the tragedy of doing the deed himself. And surely such an act of kindness would not harm Severus's soul, might even, in some small way, add to the scales in his favour, undo some of what he'd done before. Now he had to wonder, what soul? Was he, after all those years of striving, a good man? Whatever redemption may have been possible for him, he had laid it at the feet of the devil in exchange for Harry Potter. To look at him, to touch him, to have him in his bed. How was he different, in the end, than any of the other dozens of people who wanted to use the boy for their own purposes? How was he any better than the Dark Lord himself? Was wanting to possess him any better than wanting him dead? How was he any different? Severus expected to have to discuss what had happened. Had, in fact, somewhat expected Harry to demand to be let into the bathroom, to pound on the door. But when Severus returned to the room, he found that Harry had fallen sound asleep, with his feet still hanging off the edge of the bed. The mere thought of sleeping like that made Severus's back ache in sympathy, so he lifted the boy's legs and eased them up onto the mattress, manoeuvring him so that he lay in a more normal way, with his head, if not on the pillows, then at least near them. Potter stirred a bit, but didn't wake, only murmuring something unintelligible as he turned his face into the sheets. His glasses were on the floor. Severus picked them up and folded them carefully, setting them on the nightstand on Potter's side. Potter's side of his bed. He stood for a while and just looked at him, torn. He should wake him up, make him go back to his rooms, and he should do it now if he was going to at all. Quickly, like ripping off a bandage. But he was frozen in indecision. He should send him away. But then he imagined Harry waking up alone after what they'd done. Wouldn't that be worse? He imagined someone discovering them in bed together. A member of the Order. But what did it matter? Albus knew he was here. What did it matter? He was feeling reckless. He put out the light. Lying down next to Potter's quiescent body, he pulled the blankets over them both, and after a moment, Harry turned towards him. Severus didn't move away, not even when the boy's hand found him in the darkness and slid across his chest, or when his face turned into his shoulder with a sigh. Severus did not move away. Instead, he covered the hand with his own. Harry's breath was easy now in sleep. Severus wondered how long it would last. His sleep, his breath, his life. When Harry woke up the next morning, there was sunlight streaming into the room and across his face. He shifted, moving to cover his eyes, and then suddenly registered the surface he was resting his head on, and looked up. Snape was a dark blur above him, and he heard the familiar sound of a page turning and a book being closed and set aside. His head was in Snape's lap. "Good morning," Snape said. "Morning," Harry replied slowly. "I mean, it's morning, and I'm still here." "Yeah. Aren't I going to get in trouble?" He took his glasses when Snape put them in his hand and sat up reluctantly. He looked around the room. He'd never actually been inside it during the day. It was pretty small. "I assure you, I will be the one getting in trouble," Snape replied. "Don't worry yourself." "Well, in that case," Harry started, and scooted back down, burrowing himself into the blankets. He heard a soft snort of amusement. "Surely you don't want to sleep more," Snape said. Harry found his legs under the blankets and tentatively touched one of them. "No, I'm not that sleepy." "Now, Potter, don't be starting anything that will get you punished. You've only just woken up." The legs withdrew as Snape got out of the bed. Harry peeked at him from under the blankets. "What time is it?" he asked. "I've no idea," Snape said. "We could stay in bed." Severus looked down at him. He was still feeling reckless, but not quite suicidal. "Tempting," he said. "I would, however, prefer to maintain as much plausible deniability as is possible." He turned and went into the bathroom. Harry stretched luxuriously under the blankets. He felt good. He wished he could sleep like that every night, and he hadn't even needed a potion. He turned his face into the sheets and inhaled, smelling Snape's smell and feeling absolutely content. Then he froze. Someone was coming up the stairs. He lay still, eyes wide, listening. Someone banged on the door. "Severus! Severus!" Lupin shouted. "We can't find Harry! Are you in there?" Bang, bang, bang. "Severus, open up! Harry is gone!" Harry sat bolt upright and clutched the blankets to his chest, just as Snape stuck his head out of the bathroom door. "That was fast," he said, withdrew for a moment, and then came out again. He took his ward off at the door, but left it locked. "He's here, Remus," he called out. What? Lupin asked through the door. Harry's here, Snape repeated. I have him. There was a long pause. Open the door, Lupin said. Severus looked back at Harry, still in the bed, and scanned him. There were no visible signs of what had been done to him, other than, of course, Harry being there in the first place. There were no marks on him. He was dressed. He was pretty rumpled, but that couldn't be helped. The bottle of brandy was still on the bedside table, though, and he pointed his wand at it. It vanished. He opened the door. Lupin was standing there, quite alone, and his eyes travelled from Severus's nightclothes to his face, and then past him to Harry, wrapped in blankets, terrified, his glasses askew and his hair wild. He looked back at Severus. Severus, he said, voice calm. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to explain this. I'm afraid that won't be long enough, Severus replied. Hi, Harry said weakly. Why is Harry in your bed, Severus? Harry could hear an edge beginning to form in Lupin's voice. He'd seen that particular professor angry only once before, when they discovered Peter Pettigrew disguised as Ron's rat, and it had been pretty scary. He hasn't been sleeping well, Snape was saying. Not at all, in fact. I've been giving him dreamless sleep to help him. Lately, he has preferred to stay with me after he falls asleep. I, unfortunately, fell asleep as well this time, and was unable to levitate him back into his bed before morning. Therefore, he is still here. Lupin's eyes got progressively wider throughout that explanation, until Harry was sure they were going to pop right out of his head. You've been... What? He managed through clenched teeth. As I said, I have been helping him to sleep, Snape replied, his voice measured. You've been drugging him? For how long? Professor Lupin, Harry interjected, waving a hand. I'm okay. Neither man looked at him. If you think about it for a moment, Snape said, I think you'll know. Snape, Lupin growled and grabbed the front of his shirt with both fists. What have you done? Snape raised his hands in a placating gesture, and Harry scrambled out of bed. Just what I've said, Snape answered. Harry stuck an arm between them, pressing his palm against Remus's chest. Hey, he said, calm down. I'm fine, and I'm right here. Stay out of this, Harry, Remus snarled. Stay out of what? My own life, Harry spat back, inserting his other hand and doing his best to push them apart. I wish! They both looked down at him then. Remus let go of Snape's shirt and stepped back, and Snape smoothed his hands over the creases left in his clothes. Albus knows, he said. I told him everything. You told him? Remus replied, startled. And what? He's allowing it? He can't be. He is. I meant him to fire me, but he declined. He can't have done. Speak to him yourself. Snape turned to Harry. Potter, I think it best if you go downstairs and get some breakfast. Harry just looked back at him, desperately wishing Snape would just read his mind or something and let him stay upstairs. Snape's eyes moved slowly over his face, absorbing his expression, which was, apparently, all he needed. He looked back at Remus. "On second thought," he said, "I think it might be kinder if we went downstairs instead." Remus looked steadily back at him. "Fine," he answered. "Harry, you stay here." Harry looked at Snape, who nodded once at him. Remus scowled. "Okay if I take a shower?" Harry asked. "Take your time," Snape replied, and turned, leading the way down the stairs. Remus looked at Harry for another long moment. "I'm fine," Harry said again, and closed the door in his face. In the shower, Harry couldn't hear the shouting downstairs. He washed his hair and covered himself with soap, trying not to imagine what was going on in the kitchen or who was there. Trying not to imagine Ron's face or the letter he would surely write to Hermione. Trying not to imagine all the questions, all the eyes on him. But then, as he let the hot water rinse the suds off of his body, he found the sound of the spray suddenly quite distant, and small lights began to pop in his peripheral vision. And then, abruptly, it was impossible to take a full breath, and he braced his hand, and then his forehead, on the cool tile wall. It didn't help. Dizzy, he sank to his knees. "Call the headmaster if you don't believe me." Remus, Molly, Arthur, and Ronald Weasley, and Mundungus Fletcher were all assembled as his accusers. The Weasley boy seemed the most upset. He was, in fact, quite white, and Severus had to assume that he had been the one to notice Potter's absence and sound the alarm. Mundungus seemed uninterested. Molly, however, was bright red. "I shall," she said. "Arthur!" The Weasley patriarch jumped. "Yes, Molly, of course," he said, and grabbed the tin of flu powder from the kitchen island. "I'll go now." Lupin, for his part, was leaning against the wall with his arms folded and his hands in fists. "If you aren't telling the truth," he said, his voice low, "I will take care of you myself." "Please do," Severus sneered back. "After all I've done for the boy, it's only fair. Send me to Voldemort in bandages, please. In pieces." Remus pushed off from the wall and pointed his finger into Severus's face. "I'll put you in the ground," he growled, "if you've laid a single finger on him." Now, Remus," Mundungus cut in. "No need for that kind of talk." "I've laid my entire hands on him," Severus retorted. "It was a mercy. No one was there. He was alone." "Remus!" Molly cried and grabbed the werewolf's arm. "Just wait for Albus!" Remus's lip curled back, exposing a single canine, and Severus wished for the full moon. "Rip my throat out," he thought. "Eat my heart." "Let him go, Molly," he said. "He has something to say to me. Go on, Lupin. What is it?" "You sick!" Lupin snarled, but stopped suddenly as Arthur returned with Albus Dumbledore in tow. The headmaster pointed his wand between Severus and Remus, and they were both pushed back a full step. "Good morning," he said, apparently unbothered. "Tea, Molly?" "Oh, yes," Molly said, startled. "Of course, headmaster." She grabbed Ron's arm and dragged him with her, and there was a heavy silence. Albus sat himself at the kitchen table, steepled his fingers, and looked right at Severus. "I take it you have not been discreet," he said. "I may have mislaid my survival instinct," Severus replied. "I see. Perhaps it would be best if you checked on Harry now, assuming he is not currently being minded." "I'll go," Remus said at once. Severus spared him a cursory glance. "Don't take this badly, Lupin," he drawled, "but he will not want you." "Headmaster!" "Remus, please, stay. Severus, check on him, will you?" Severus nodded once, intensely grateful for the reprieve, and swept out of the kitchen. Well, perhaps not swept, as much as left. He was still in his nightclothes, after all. No trailing robes to put a punctuation mark on his exit. Upon entering his rooms, Severus could hear the water still running in the bathroom, and he knocked on the door. "Potter," he called, "are you all right?" No answer. "Potter! Potter!" He knocked again, and again louder. "Potter! Answer me!" Nothing. The door was unlocked. He threw it open and tore back the shower curtain. Harry was crumpled beneath the spray, his head between his knees and his hands clutching his hair. Severus immediately turned off the water, which by this time was barely room temperature, and jerked a towel from the pegs on the wall. He threw it over the boy and dragged him out of the tub, finding his body shivering and cold to the touch. "Potter," he said into Harry's ear, "breathe with me now. Breathe. Breathe. Inhale." He inhaled deliberately, forcing his own breath to slow, to deepen. "Calm," he thought to himself. "Calm. Exhale." He let his breath out. "Slow, slow, calm. Easy." He did it again and again, but Harry did not respond. He remained mannequin-like in Severus's arms. He might have been dead if it weren't for the shivering. "I did this to him," Severus thought. "I broke him open, and I let them find him like that." "Potter, come on," Severus said. "I have you. Breathe with me. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Slowly, he felt Harry's breathing start to match his own, his ribcage expanding and contracting in time under Severus's hands. "That's good," he murmured. "Very good. Inhale." He counted. Exhale. He moved one hand to the back of Harry's head, into his soaking wet hair. "That's good, Potter. Breathe." He was still trembling quite violently, and under his hands Harry's breathing stabilized, but then fractured as he started to cry. "Shh," Severus said, stroking his hair. "Nothing's happened. You're all right." Harry's hands came up to clutch at Severus's back, and he buried his face further into his chest. He felt so fragile, like a glass figurine, his shoulder blades sharp, and the knobs of his spine very apparent. Had he always been so thin? Was he eating? Who was meant to be taking care of him? At just that moment, just as Severus had that thought, he heard footsteps in his bedroom, and Molly Weasley appeared in the bathroom door. She froze at the sight of them. Severus gestured desperately at her to leave. "They're going to take me away," Harry gasped, his voice broken by sobs and muffled against Severus's shirt. "No," Severus murmured back, making hard eye contact with Molly. "No one will take you. You're safe. I promised. I have you. Breathe." He began his counting again, not moving his gaze from Molly's. "Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Harry struggled to match him, but slowly, again, his breathing began to level. Molly just stared at them, her eyebrows drawn down, and Severus jerked his eyes toward the door, and that time she went. Severus stayed on the bathroom floor with Harry for a long time. Finally, when the boy's body began to relax, he dared try to move him. "Let me take you back to bed," he said. Harry shook his head against his chest. "No. Potter, I'm going to put you back in bed. You're cold. Do as I say." He didn't shake his head that time, so Severus tightened his arms and very carefully made his way to his feet, taking Harry with him, wrapped in the towel. He manoeuvred him out to the bathroom and towards the bed, where he let the wet towel drop to the floor and pushed him gently down onto the sheets. As he'd done the night before, he lifted Harry's legs up onto the bed and covered him with the blankets. He felt his forehead. It was cold and damp, but at the contact, Potter's hand slid out from under the sheets and touched his. "Don't," he said. "Potter," Severus began, "I've got to go back downstairs." They won't let you come back." "No. The headmaster is here. He'll fix it." "They'll take you." "I will find you again if they do," Severus answered. "Whatever happens." Harry turned his face into Severus's palm. "I swear it." "Okay," Harry replied. His eyelids were drooping. "Sir." "Sleep. I'll see you when you wake." He slept. Severus threw the extra blanket over him and drew the curtains against the sun. Hopefully he would sleep for a while. A full day would be a mercy.